To that extent, I'm going to kick off. And the problem, food waste into landfill. It's a massive problem. Most people don't understand just how big it is. And 97%, even though we're doing a lot of composting, 97% is still going into landfill, and it's a huge problem. You can see there by the numbers, the carbon equivalent is about 2 tonnes. But the emerging issue that I think is quite striking, and I know we have some biosecurity people here. The issue that's emerging is that how do we protect the country from a biosecurity point of view? And of course, what we do at the moment is we say, please do not feed this stuff to animals, because it may contain remnants of bacon and pork and stuff that's come from overseas that might be carrying things like swine flu. So at the moment, the way we do that is say we rely on people to do the right thing and not do that. Imagine the amount of food waste that's around and the difficulty in policing that particular problem and ensuring that doesn't happen. If we had an ideal world, what we would say is, quite a number of us ate last night at the Tattersalls, fantastic food. There wasn't a lot of food left on the plates, by the way. But that particular food waste, what we call a food waste producer, restaurants, cafes, retirement villages, probably should treat that food immediately so that it's now safe and it's not going to spread disease across the country at a biosecurity level. Obviously, that's financially not achievable, but if we have a situation where we can make that financially achievable by turning that food waste into valuable products, then we've turned the whole thing around in a circular, what is a common term now, circular economy. So what I'd like this academic group today to do is to keep an open mind and to understand that there are ways that we can eliminate. I think we can go a long way to eliminating that biosecurity threat that food waste produces if it doesn't get disposed of correctly in landfill and other places. So composting is the big thing. My Shire Council put a $600,000 composting facility in. Looks extremely low value. It's something like $20 a tonne. You can't actually transport the compost for the value of it. So they have people coming to the tip, loading it up into their trailers and taking it home and putting it around the garden, etc., etc. But with all the composting that's happening right across the country, we still have 90%, 97% of the food waste going into landfill. So we need to do a hell of a lot of composting, and then it's already a saturated market. So we don't believe it's the answer. My language on that a year ago was a little bit more mooted, but now I'm very strong on the idea that composting is not our long-term solution. The EPA in New South Wales recently put out an order, not a request, but a full-on order that composting was not to be applied to rural farmland, because there's been, over the last few years, they've noticed a residual build-up of contaminants coming from the compost into the landfill. And of course, we still have the methane issue that's happening. So we have an obligation, all of us. I have 6 children and 7 grandchildren. These are 2 of my grandchildren. And can I just ask, hands up, anyone who's got a grandchild in the room? Okay. Anyone who's got children? That's pretty good. Anyone who's got a loved one? All right, so everyone in this room has got a vested interest in this situation, okay? A very vested interest. I am worried. I'm worried about where we're heading, generally speaking. I wouldn't be what's called a greenie, I don't think, but we need to do commercial things that make commercial sense and to mitigate these types of problems. This particular facility, when you see throughout the day here, you'll see that we're not asking for any government money, we're not asking for subsidies, we're not asking for grants and all those sorts of things. We don't need any of this. We set out right in the beginning 2.5, 3 years ago to make sure we can make this happen without asking for those sorts of things, because what essentially happens is you put your business model around needing grants and other money, and then when that stops for whatever reason, your business model fails and all of a sudden you can't deliver what you thought you were going to deliver. So this is a completely standalone financial business, and the beautiful thing about it is that it will roll out into all regional centres. Anywhere with 12, 15,000 people could have a scaled down small facility producing poultry feed and a byproduct of liquid fertiliser. And the only thing that's left after that is pure water, so nothing goes to the tip at all. So please think about your loved ones and children, and my 2 beautiful grandchildren, 2 of the 7 anyway. So, a little bit about the poultry industry. It's staggering. It is the largest food production that we do, and it's probably the most economical, and it's the most, it's really efficient. Very, very, very efficient. I've been to the last 3 poultry science symposiums put on by the Sydney University, 3 days of poultry science. You guys would probably be okay with it, but from a layperson's point of view, very difficult to sit through 3 days of that. They know every single thing that goes on with the chook, and but the numbers are staggering. You can see there, for example, on the egg production, 27 million hens. There's 516 million dozen eggs every year, and 850,000 tonnes of poultry feed. On the chicken meat side, 1,238,000 tonnes, and another 3 million tonnes of poultry feed. So it's a very, very big industry. And then if you pop over to China, where I was 5 weeks ago, I don't have enough noughts behind the zero to give you the numbers. It's massive. And with the pig industry having swine flu issues over there, it's put increasing demand on the poultry industry. At the last Poultry Science Symposium, the topic was alternate feeds, because it's perceived that the poultry industry will need to double its production worldwide by 2050 to feed the population. And the big question is, where do we get the feed to feed the chooks? That's the big question. Where are we going to find the grains, the soybean, the barley, the wheats and all those crops? God's not producing any more land for us. We're just about, the farmer can tweak it maybe another 0.5% or 1%. They're so efficient as it is, they are already. And we have problems like the droughts and the global warmings and all the other things we've got happening. It's increasingly difficult to understand how they're going to be able to feed these animals. And with 30% of all food that's produced is wasted, there's a resource there that can come back into this food chain. We worked on this particular little sort of a graph, or whatever you'd like to call it. I find it quite interesting because there's 3 huge problems, and if you put food recycle in the middle, we believe we can solve all those problems. The big one is the food waste implications worldwide. It's the long-term poultry feed ingredients, and it's the food waste biosecurity threat that I spoke of earlier, where the food waste itself is a biosecurity threat. So we believe that we can manage all 3 of those and essentially fix that problem. Now, the process to get to where we are at the moment is a long process. First of all, you've got to come up with the idea. Secondly, you've got to try and protect it from an intellectual property point of view, and you'll hear from our intellectual property attorney later today in that regard. And then we've got to work out, how do we show you people how this can happen in a tangible way without just sitting here all day and talking about it. So what we decided to do was to build a facility, a scaled down facility that you could see, touch and have a look at, and that would actually process the food. And that's what's across the road down here, and we're going to go back and forward there a couple of times today for you to see that. I want to impress on you that this facility is not seamless. The factories that we've now designed, the food waste comes in one end and pellets come out the other. Here we have demonstrating for you the 5 very distinct steps that are required to produce poultry feed and liquid fertiliser. So just quickly going through those, container 1 is the big container down there, and that's what we call heat treatment. When these wonderful gentlemen just here, one here and one here, Damar and VJ from the Western Sydney University, after we patented our idea, they did what's called a proof of concept for us, where they took their laboratories, they took food waste in from 9 different places, and they processed that food waste and proved that we could make poultry feed out of it and that it was a safe product. The thing that they were most anxious to do in our process was that as soon as we get the food waste, today you'll see food waste that have come from the Tattalus last night, so it's only 10 hours, 12 hours old, and that food waste will go into container number 1, and you'll see that go into container number 1. And what happens there under VJ's instructions is that we steam that material whole. We don't do anything with it, we put it in and we steam it, and that controls the microbes essentially on the outside of the material, so that when we further process it, it doesn't spread those microbes any further. So that process, a food waste outlet doesn't sort the food out for us. Everything goes in there. Oyster shells, T-bones, bread, lettuce leaves, anything. Whatever they make goes in. They don't have to sort anything out. We ask them to keep the rubbish out. Then, once it comes through that steam and we've controlled the microbes initially, it goes into step 2, which is container number 2, which is a macerator. Now that macerator then breaks that material up into pretty consistent pieces, so that we can then further heat treat that to the core of the material and kill everything, including African swine flu. Okay, we can kill African swine flu. That will then go into container 3. So we will do that when I finish and we have a cup of tea, and then we'll wander down there and we'll get that all the way to container number 3 in a matter of not very long at all. Then after lunch we'll go down and we'll empty the heat treatment barrel out, and you'll see you'll see the dried food, and then we'll put that through a hammer mill, and we'll produce one waste stream. The secret to this entire project is that we collect waste from several different types of locations, and if you think about it, the example I like to use is bakery waste is very different to butcher's waste. Okay, so therefore we process that entire stream on its own and we store it because it's now shelf stable. Okay, once that material is stored, we can then, working with another wonderful scientist, I don't know where he is, Bob Swick, sir. Bob, you got your hand? There he is, right at the back. Been working with him since my first poultry science symposium in Sydney, and what we're looking to do there is to work out that once we've got these 6 waste streams, or it could be 7, maybe even be more, once we have these waste streams, how can we blend those waste streams in what proportions to make a finished product that is acceptable to the poultry industry, because their feed requirements are very, very different. A baby chick needs something very different to a boiler that needs it so what we're working with Bob and the university here to do now is to fine tune. We know we can already blend it, we know that. You'll see poultry feed today that has been randomly blended, and when these guys at Sydney Uni did it, we got pretty good results. We had 18% protein, we had too much salt, and we had some other stuff. So we know that can happen, but we want to get it perfect. So we want a poultry farm to say to us, this is my formula, and we're going to actually make it by using those 6 waste streams and perhaps adding a handful or whatever of raw ingredient or whatever's needed. So those are our 5 steps down there. It looks quite big, but it's actually only a scaled down version. So RMR processors, who you'll hear from today, we engage them at the beginning of this process to design. They work in the area of food manufacturing and pet food manufacturing facilities right across Australia, and I think they even do some international work. And so we engaged them very early to understand how we could scale this smaller facility into larger facilities. And this particular facility here is what we call our 3.5 tonne facility. It has 3 production lines, so it can run 3 separate waste streams at a time. You could increase that to 6 waste streams at a time. And essentially what's happening here is that you have 3.5 tonnes of raw material, that's raw waste, coming in every hour. We believe we should be running about 20 hours a day. Then we have 4 hours downtime for cleaning and sterilising and doing all those sorts of things. So basically, you can do about 60 with this facility designed here that Brendan, the very talented young engineer with them, has designed. We can do about 60 tonnes per day of waste through the facility. Bearing in mind we get about 39% poultry feed, 9% liquid fertiliser, and the rest is water. So you can do your maths backwards if you like. And as opposed to composting, at the moment poultry feed's around $700 a tonne. A little bit different to $20 a tonne. Okay. Yeah, so that's a little bit more on what the facility looks like. Brendan will talk at length later today about the design of this facility and the biosecurity that's even involved in the factory, where we segregate sections. So for example, raw material, people working in that section don't get into the section that's where that material has already been sterilised and moved on, so that there's no transfer of biosecurity issues in that regard. So this guy here, very, very important guy. We love this guy. And later this month, I believe, we have a lot of celebrities here and a lot of VIPs. I'm not really good on the VIP thing. I think everyone here is a VIP. You've taken your time to come here today. You've taken an effort and financially put yourself out to get here and to try and understand what's going on. So I think that's an excellent start, and as far as I'm concerned, everyone here is a VIP today. But this guy here, we've got a board meeting. I've got my board, the whole board of food recyclers here. You'll meet them tonight at the networking dinner. But this guy here, I'm going to suggest to my board of directors that this guy should be installed on the board. He's really important to us, and I think he'd make an excellent board member. So we'll discuss that later.